intimidating aspect to his character. Next, I think it's worthwhile to talk about Aeris, as she's a significant character and bridges many of the scenarios and characters of the past with the contemporary events of Final Fantasy VII. Much of this is arguably retconned or developed post Final Fantasy VII's release, such as the affections of Sung towards her, but there are certain aspects of Aeris we know for certain, such as her relationship with Zack Fair, and this offers Zack's past and Cloud's imposition as Soldier First Class a bit more context. And as I mentioned already, there's a love triangle between Cloud and Tifa and Aeris, which is almost purposeful because it shows how Cloud has encroached so heavily and superseded Zack's past and his romances at the expense of his own true identity and, of course, Zack's legacy. In terms of her role in the game, Aeris represents the yin to Sephiroth's yang, where Sephiroth wields dark forces, quite literally using black materia and summoning Meteor. Aeris represents the lightness and wields Holy, which is the macrocosmic world-saving counter to Sephiroth's carnage. These two represent very conventional extremities of good and evil. And one of the things that makes Cloud so interesting as the hero is how, rather than embodying goodness himself like Aeris does, he straddles the realms of both on his journey and is more a pawn than an architect of a given endeavour, particularly at the beginning of the game when he's just taking contracts for Avalanche and being controlled by Sephiroth. Aeris' backstory, like Tifa's, is another that doesn't warrant its own gameplay segment, like Cosmo Canyon for Red 13 or Coral for Barret, and much of the explaining for Aeris' past is found through flashbacks in discussion with Elmra, I think her name is, and little bits of kind of fleeting exposition that we find at the Icicle Inn, for example, and in the Forgotten Capital. Her pursuit and capture by the Turks and attempted experimentation by Hojo on Disc 1 highlights to Cloud just how sought after she is by Shinra and her significance as an ancient and as the last surviving ancient. So, as this, ancient sort of being, Aeris embodies the oneness with the planet that juxtaposes Shinra's greed and Sephiroth's desire to destroy it. Now, one of the historically kind of milestone moments of Final Fantasy VII, and one of the most significant aspects of Aeris' role in the story, is of course the fact that she dies. It's popularly regarded that Hironobu Sakaguchi's testament to life and the finiteness of being is incarnate in this game due to losing his mother during the game's conception. But in terms of Aeris' death and its progression of the story, I think it's quite fitting to have occurred as and when it did. Firstly, it adds clarity to Sephiroth's ruthlessness, and where many Final Fantasies have shown the deaths of innocent people, they've never done it to a main party member in quite an abrupt or remorseless fashion. It's a really good FMV sequence for the time, and secondly, it resolves the love triangle angle with Cloud and Tifa, which realistically would have been getting quite tiring if it progressed beyond this point, and it basically had to end at some point and had its payoff with the Gold Saucer date anyway. So for my part, I think from a story perspective, Aeris' death was good. I didn't find myself crying over it, as some fans have kind of said they did. Aeris is important to the storyline, and overall she's a good character with an interesting backstory. But some of her more outspoken and impulsive characteristics were quite tiring for me, and I don't think an entire game could be carried by a character like that. And just on a purely subjective note, between the two love interests, I did prefer Tifa, as she was much more thoughtful and reserved in her demeanour, which I appreciate in people generally. So as I've said, Aeris is a fantastic character, and I think the plot device of her death was incredibly important and necessary for the successful delivery of this game's story.